So it is January 2025. I did just upload the iPod in Texas video, but I decided let's do an Apple collection video for the year 2025. Well, for some people, 2025 hasn't been going so great. It has been doing good for me in terms of my Apple collection. So let's get started. We're gonna go iPods and then iPhones because I have a ton of iPhones. First off, we have my iPod Nano 2nd generation. This is a 4GB model, pink. This one does power on and work, including the battery. I don't know how this hasn't gotten the black spot yet. Next up for the Nanos is my 3rd generation. This one's also 4GB. It has quite a few dents in the back, but it does power on. The battery is shot, so it will only work when on the charge. I'm wearing gloves because of fingerprints. Next for the Nanos, we have my Nano 6th gen. This is an 8GB model. Product red. Battery also works in this one. Powers on. Really good little music player. Although I wish it had Bluetooth. Next up, we have my iPod Touch 2nd gen. This one's an 8GB model MC. It's running iOS 3.1.3. It's in pretty okay condition. There are a few scratches on the back. The screen's lifting up. It wasn't refurbished that good, but it does power on and work. Although an issue with this is because I jailbroke it using Legacy iOS Kit, this no longer syncs with iTunes, but it does still power on and work. And I can just use the iFile web server to sync data to it. Next iPod is my Touch 4. It's an 8GB model running iOS 6. I cannot show you that engraving because it has a phone number. It's quite scratched on the back, but this one does turn on. The battery is absolute trash in this thing. It does not last for like more than 5 minutes, but at least it turns on and I can use it with a power bank. Last up for the iPods, my newest and biggest capacity iPod, my Touch 5th gen. This one is 32GB. It's running iOS 9. I can actually turn it on and show you if it has charge, that is, which it does. iOS 9 is known for taking forever to boot, so I'm just going to move on to the iPhones while we wait for this to turn on. I have a ton of iPhones, so we're just going to go in order by generation. First off, we have my iPhone 4 CDMA. It's an 8GB model running iOS 7.1.2. I'll actually power on and show you. We still have charge. iPod Touch 5 has turned on, so I'll go into settings and show you. And if you watched my iPod in Texas video, you will know that I said that this one has a strong battery on it. But other than that, it is a 32GB on iOS 9.3.5. In the iPhone 4, as you can see here, 7.1.2, 8GB, Sprint CDMA. There are a few scratches on the screen, but the only real cosmetic damage is a tiny crack in the corner of the front screen. Next up, we have my iPhone 4Ss. I have 2 of these. We're going to go this one first. This one's 8GB, running iOS 6.1.3. I'll actually turn this one on for you guys if it has charge, which it does. Here's my other one. This one's demolished, but it still turns on. This one's also running iOS 6.1.3, 16GB. I'll turn this one on too. As you can see here, they are both running iOS 6. 8GB, 16GB. You probably saw I used this one's almost entire storage. Next up, we have my iPhone 5 series devices. Here we have my iPhone 5. This one is a 16GB on iOS 8.4.1. The frame is in decent condition. I have a video on this one coming soon, the unboxing and the painful downgrade. As you can see, 16GB, iOS 8.4.1. We do have some liquid damage in the top right screen, but I have not seen any operation effects by that yet. We have my iPhone 5C. This one's green, 8GB. This one is actually iCloud bypassed. So you cannot use cellular on this, and apps expire after 7 days, even using the App Store. I'll turn this one on for you guys. It may be worth it just to tether downgrade it to iOS 7 or 8 so I can jailbreak and use AppSync, but I would want to get a Mac before I do anything like that, since legacy iOS is not available in Windows, and there is zero chance that I would go back to daily driving Linux. Yep, 8 gigs on iOS 10.3.3. If I wanted to downgrade this one, I would have to do it tethered, and I want to get a Mac to do that. Last up for the 3G only iPhones, we have my iPhone 5S. This is a 16 gig on iOS 12.5.7. I don't think the battery in this one is charged, so just take my word. 16 gigs, the latest iOS 12. And now we move on to the more modern devices. We have my iPhone 6S. This one is actually 64 gigabytes. It's running iOS 15.8.2. Camera almost fell there. Last iPhone to have a headphone jack. This one is also unfortunately iCloud bypassed, so there's not a whole lot I can do with it other than just use it as like an iPod Touch that gets horrible battery life. Like seriously, the battery lasts 1.5 to 2 hours on average. No, like 1 hour. Next up we have my iPhone 7s. I actually have 2 of these. They're both 128 gigs. This one on the left is running iOS 15.7.8, and this one is running iOS 13.2.3. Let's see if these have charge, to which they both do. But there is the model and version information. There we have our capacity. It is a 128 gigabyte model. This is not my main phone if you're wondering why I use so much storage on this, and that is because I just installed a bunch of garbage on it. Use this phone even if I wanted to because of that. But other than that, it works perfectly with no problems. Oh yeah, fun fact, I also found this phone in a recycling bin. As for the other one, here is the information, and there's the capacity. This one has basically nothing on it. Here's your battery health. This one also had an issue where the display cable is loose, so it would sometimes show crazy lines on the screen. Currently does not have that, but I still wouldn't trust to use this phone as my daily driver. The camera glass is also totally gone on this thing too, but it does power on and work just fine as 128 gigs. And next up are my iPhone 8s. I say iPhone 8s because I have 4 of them. We have this one, this one, this one, this one. I'll start with this one since this one's the most boring. And the reason I say this one's the most boring is because this one does not turn on. The battery is expanded on this one, and it's missing its SIM tray because I needed the SIM tray off of this thing for my normal phone. It's also got dirt in the charging port. The screen is also, there's remnants from a case, but I'm pretty sure this is running iOS 16.2. May replace the battery on this someday. And by I may, I mean I will at some point, just don't know when. And now for the working ones. We'll start with this one, since this one's the least functional working one. I say least functional because this one is also iCloud bypassed. Battery lasts 1.5 to 2 hours. No signal, no notifications, iServices don't work. The battery health is at 88%, so, but that does not reflect the fact that it was, yeah. It's running iOS 16.7.8 and is 64 gigs. Next up, we have my other iOS 16 iPhone 8. This one is fully functioning. The battery is dying on this one, but it does still turn on. I think it might even have some charge in it. Let's see. To which it does. While we're waiting for that one to turn on, I'll introduce my most interesting iPhone 8. This one is probably the rarest iPhone I own, other than the one I'm recording with right now. Why is this rare, you may ask? It looks like a normal 64 gig rose gold iPhone 8. Trust me, it's not your normal iPhone 8. This one's running iOS 13.2. This thing's been through 2 owners. The first owner passed away, and the second owner did not take very good care of this iPhone. We got some chips, we got some scratches, we got a deep scratch in the screen. This was left in a field overnight. I don't know how it survived that, but still powers on, still works with no issues. I'll actually show you the version in settings now on both of this one and the other one. Here's the version info on the iOS 16 one and the capacity data. The iOS 13 one, on the other hand, is 64 gigs. There's the information. And there you have the battery health on both of them. This one's 81, this one's 95. Both very good phones. I would definitely use the iOS 13 one if I had to choose an iPhone 8 in my collection to use. And now for probably my 2 most prized possessions. We'll start off with this one. This is my iPhone X. I found this in a recycling bin as well. I use this one every now and then. For example, whenever I want to record something in 4K 60 FPS, this iPhone X is my first go-to. You're probably wondering, why not just use your normal phone? Well, this one is 256 gigabytes. It's also running iOS 16.6.1, which is the last version to support Troll Store, other than 17.0. You can boot it up and see, and while this one's booting, I can show you the big boy. If this has charge, that is, which it does. All right. And finally, I'm going to need to switch to wide angle view for this because it is my iPhone XS Max. This thing is one big boy. As you can see, we do have a tiny crack in the screen. No big deal. Rose gold. Let's turn this thing on and I will show you what is so special about it. Here's your version and model data, and there's your capacity data. As you can see, I do use this thing a ton for photography and videography, as there are hundreds of pictures and videos on here. Here's the battery health. It is at 80%, so I might want to consider replacing this at some stage since I do use this iPhone a lot. Now for the XS Max. As you can see, it still thinks the 17.5.1 is still signed because I have not connected it to the internet in so long. This thing is on iOS 16.3.1, which is incredible for jailbreaking. As you can see, we are also on 512 gigs, and there's like nothing used. Battery health is even at 97%. Also did install the Dolphin emulator on this thing, and Troll Store, and many other jailbreak tweaks. So that concludes the Apple collection of 2025. Hope you enjoyed this video. I'll see you again in the next one.